The day the Grand Princess went to Linen Prefecture to find her savior, my sister sent me to the mountains to gather a medicinal herb. By the time I returned home, she had been adopted as the Grand Princess's goddaughter and was about to leave for the capital to be granted the title of County Princess. She insisted, "That year when you were injured in the wilderness, I carried you back through the bitter cold. Consider this your repayment to me." I agreed to her request. Everyone said she was embarking on a path of splendor and smooth sailing, yet they didn't know the princess was merely seeking a pawn to marry off to the western regions in place of her own daughter. When she felt timid, I firmly said, "I will help you soar high." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The prefect's wife, who once publicly humiliated me at the flower viewing banquet, now comes to my door to discuss marriage. Back then, she said my background was too lowly and would disgrace her son. Now she holds my hand, repeatedly praising my elegant and refined temperament, like a winter plum in the snow, all because my sister became the savior of the princess and was adopted as her goddaughter. With the emperor bestowing upon her the title of Princess Linen, the ferry at the dock is already waiting. Tomorrow she will journey to the capital to become the princess's cherished treasure. Everyone says I'm basking in my sister's glory, my status rising with the tide. Even the once haughty prefect's wife now says I am worthy of her son. But was that glory truly meant for my sister? Late at night, she held my hand and pleaded desperately, "Since we were children, I've always given way to you, never competing with you. This time, just let me have my way once more." Her eyes were filled with stubbornness. She absolutely refused to miss this trip to the capital. "Sister, if you choose this path, there will be no turning back." She simply wouldn't take my hint. She held my hand, choking back sobs, and said, "Su Qinghuan, do you remember that year when you were 9, trapped in the snow-covered mountains? I carried you home step by step on my back." Of course I remembered. She was reminding me that I owed her. "Remember, I'll pay you back." With those words, my figure vanished into the deep night. On the day the Grand Princess arrived in Linen, my sister Su Qinghuan complained of chest pain and sent me into the city to find a medicinal herb for her. But by the time I returned, the entire estate was celebrating. Because my sister held my token, she instantly became the savior of the princess. That jade plum hairpin was exactly the one I had shown her months ago. She had already set her mind on it back then. I took my sister's hand and, under her pleading gaze, did not expose her. It was I who encountered the princess on the mountain that day. She was already suffering from a high fever and was delirious. Her maids were at a loss, but I happened to be gathering herbs and had the right medicine in my basket. I was the one who saved the princess. At the time, my face was badly swollen from a failed medicine trial, so I covered it with a veil. They didn't get a clear look at my appearance. The princess, upon learning that I was looked down upon due to my humble origins, casually took the jade plum hairpin from her hair and gifted it to me, saying with a laugh that my fortune would begin that very day. The boat to take my sister to the capital will set sail early tomorrow morning. The princess is the current emperor's elder sister, who played an indispensable role in assisting His Majesty to the throne and is deeply respected. Everyone in Linen Prefecture is saying that my sister's departure is like a phoenix rising from the ashes, destined for a meteoric rise. I calmly watched the envious gazes of the crowd. Before leaving, I whispered to my sister, "The Grand Princess passed by Lingyan Temple in Linen 6 years ago and made a vow before the Buddha. She's here this time to fulfill that vow. Be careful not to accidentally let it slip." My sister gave me a grateful look, then suppressed the joy in her heart and turned to board the ship. Behind her followed a large entourage of servants, making for a grand spectacle. The shore was crowded with people. All the noble families of Linen Prefecture were there to see her off. My father was merely a minor official of the 7th rank, yet from then on, everyone in Linen Prefecture knew that the Su family had a daughter named Su Qinghuan, who had been granted the title of Junzhu. In truth, the princess had gone to Lingyan Temple 6 years ago to make a wish for her daughter, and now she had returned to fulfill that vow, still for the sake of her daughter. The Grand Princess married the general who guards the nation, and their loving story spread throughout the capital. They had only one daughter, who was notoriously arrogant, willful, and ruthless. My sister didn't know that entering the Grand Princess's mansion didn't mean she would become sisters with that infamous Ming'an County princess. When I met that prefectural magistrate's son, he was raising his eyebrows and looking me up and down. "You're the second daughter of the Su family. My mother must be getting senile. With your status, if I married you, I'd be the laughingstock of all the noble sons. If it were that Linen County princess, it might barely be a match." He spoke while shaking his head, as if he had truly suffered some great injustice, I took a step forward and said slowly, "The prefect's family status is too high. I never thought of reaching beyond my station before, and I never will in the future. Please rest assured, young Master Li," seeing my cold attitude. He sneered, "You don't know what's good for you." With that, he flicked his sleeve and left. My maid, Wansue, who had been holding back her anger, finally muttered gloomily, "If only you were granted the title of a princess, we wouldn't have to endure others' cold looks anymore. The eldest young lady is so fortunate." She rose to prominence in an instant. She walked a path full of thorns. I interrupted Wansue's words aloud. The magistrate's family sent an invitation, asking the Su family to attend a play at their residence. This was a banquet that could not be refused. At the banquet, the prefect's wife made it clear that she wanted to finalize this marriage as soon as possible, ideally by the end of the year. Between the lines, she also mentioned the favor the prefect had shown my father in his promotion, implying that my father's official career was entirely in their hands. The Li family's son was far from a suitable match. His reputation as a libertine was well known throughout Linen Prefecture. Yet, my father's expression shifted repeatedly, and in the end, he could only evade the issue, not daring to outright refuse. Until I had the ability to resist, I could only endure the humiliation in silence. Just like at the flower viewing banquet. When the prefect's wife said in front of everyone that I wasn't worthy, I could only endure it in silence, and just like now, my father is suffering in silence, unable to speak his pain. When I went to the backyard for some fresh air, I happened to see that young Master Li embracing a woman, whispering sweet nothings to her. The woman sobbed softly, "If the rightful mistress enters the household, where will there be a place for me?" Young Master Li comforted, "What are you afraid of? You're already carrying my child. If she knows what's good for her, fine. If not, I have plenty of ways to deal with her." I didn't make a sound, only retraced my steps back the way I came. Everything is just as it was in the previous life. But this time, I no longer felt the fear and panic from my past life. The days of treading carefully and watching others' expressions could not go on any longer. Elder sister's soaring success is destined to lift the entire Su family along with her. Gazing in the direction of the capital, I whispered, "Su Qingwan, even if I had known what would happen today, I would still choose to send you to the capital and help you soar. Do not let me down." The magistrate's family sent the betrothal gifts directly to the Su residence. Father's face turned livid, and he finally lost his patience, ordering both the people and the gifts to be thrown out. He sat in silence for several hours, then muttered to himself that his official career was over. Father was afraid that my sister would have a hard time, and even more afraid that I would be wronged. Late the next night, father still hadn't returned. The prefect had arranged for him to handle affairs in the remote villages nearby, but the surrounding counties had just experienced floods a few days ago, making the mountain roads difficult and dangerous. Mother was extremely anxious. This was clearly the prefect deliberately making things difficult, counting the days. The imperial edict for the promotion should be arriving soon. I trust my sister. Given her way of doing things, she is sure to win the favor of the princess. With the princess's guilt added to the mix, the Su family's chance to rise to prominence was right before their eyes. When the imperial decree arrived, father had not yet returned to the county office. It was the prefect who received the edict on his behalf. Father was suddenly promoted several ranks and transferred to the Ministry of Revenue's Bureau of Revenue, soon to take up a post in the capital. The prefect hurriedly went to the remote outskirts to find father, returning covered in mud, looking utterly disheveled. When father was found, his eyes were full of bewilderment. The Su family moved to the capital, leaving Linen Prefecture. Even on the way to the capital, father still hadn't come to his senses. The morning dew moistened the tall locust trees, and mist wreathed the slender willow branches. The magnificent and splendid imperial city came into view once more, yet I felt none of the joy and excitement I had in my past life. As soon as I entered the city, I bumped into a noble, none other than the arrogant and domineering Princess Mingen. My father trembled with fear, but I knew it was the noble who had deliberately provoked the incident. Princess Mingen, seated high on her majestic horse, cast a disdainful glance at me and said, "So you're Su Qingwan's sister." In my previous life, she had asked me the same way. Back then, I was so frightened by the riding crop she held high that I instinctively stepped back, only to trip over my skirt and fall to the ground. It became a huge joke. She laughed so hard she nearly doubled over, and finally said, as expected of a country bumpkin, unfit for the grand stage, "Su Qingwan's sister is nothing special after all." But now, facing her raised crop, I calmly replied, Yes, I am Su Qinghuan's sister. She raised her eyes, full of arrogance, and said, "You startled my horse. You deserve to be punished," I said in a low voice. "Galloping on the street and injuring people violates the law. Does the princess wish to be added to the minister's impeachment list now?" she said arrogantly. "I've been impeached many times before, one more won't make a difference." As soon as she finished speaking, the whip in her hand lashed out toward me. As I dodged, someone suddenly stepped in front of me, shielding me, and with a raised hand snatched her whip and threw it to the ground. Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. The man had his back to me, but his upright posture and unyielding spirit made me recognize him instantly. Princess Mingan's face also turned grim in that moment. She said coldly, "How dare you raise a hand against me to protect her? I uphold the laws of the great Yarrow dynasty. Galloping a horse on the streets is no different from committing a crime. Your Highness, you have overstepped your bounds." His voice was calm, resolute, and composed, just like that upright and virtuous minister of the past, steadfast as a pine tree. Princess Mingan was seething with anger, yet she managed to restrain herself. She loved him so much that she was willing to defy the imperial decree and refuse the political marriage. In my past life, I once saw her, on the eve of her political marriage, pouring out her heartfelt feelings to him, but he, dressed in a blue robe, only coldly said from a distance, "Whether the princess is willing to marry or not has nothing to do with me." With just that one sentence, he made her cry as if her heart were breaking. He was never one to meddle in others' affairs. Helping out today was already an exception. The moment our eyes met, I looked at him calmly. After I thanked him, his gaze fell on my face, filled with confusion. Perhaps he also felt a sense of familiarity with me. Meeting again, old acquaintances reunited. It's just that he doesn't remember. It wasn't until a light cough sounded beside him that he realized his own rudeness and impropriety. Wan Sui whispered to me, "Miss, do you know that young gentleman?" "Do I know him?" They had only been married for a few years. Lu Jingyuan was a rising star in the court, renowned for his concern for the common people as a distinguished scholar, and a virtuous minister willing to risk his life to solve major cases. Unfortunately, he was not a good match. After settling in the capital, my elder sister came to visit. She was dressed in finery and carried herself with grace. The grand princess seemed to truly treat her as her own daughter, at least in front of others. Elder sister slowly approached and stopped beside me. The maids behind her entered one by one, carrying trays. "Qinghuan, you will surely love these things: silks, satins, jewels, and ornaments, truly dazzling and breathtakingly beautiful." Mother also showed a joyful expression, standing by my side and smiling as she said, "Your sister cares for you the most. It's thanks to her that our Su family enjoys such good days now." When sister heard this, her face turned very pale, and a look of guilt appeared in her eyes. After mother left, my sister said slowly, "I took what was yours." I looked up, staring at her intently, and said in a low voice, "You didn't take it. I deliberately let you have it." Her eyes were full of shock, her face full of confusion. Someday, my sister will understand what I meant by those words. "I heard that you are very close to the second prince. If it's true, then step by step, get closer to him, gain power, and become a woman who can stand by his side. Only then can you achieve everything you desire," I said slowly. My sister took a step back, her expression somewhat flustered, because I had guessed correctly and hit the mark of her thoughts. I accurately revealed her plans, so she became afraid. "You know all my plans and yet you don't expose me. What do you want?" Facing the wariness in her eyes, I patted her shoulder. "Sister, don't be afraid. Not only will I not expose you, but I will also help you cover it up and rise step by step." The slight smile curled at the corner of my lips, but the confusion in her eyes only deepened. How could I possibly expose her? The princess did not care at all who had saved her, Su Qinghuan or Su Qinghuan. It didn't matter. All she wanted was a well-behaved, obedient, and dignified pawn. Her sister's performance greatly satisfied the princess. In less than a month since arriving in the capital, she had won praise from everyone, high and low, whether in her past life or this one. She had always done exceptionally well. She came this time because I reminded her again to be careful not to say the wrong thing. After all, in 3 days, the Grand Princess is hosting a banquet and has also invited the Su family. In my previous life, when I first arrived in the capital, I always felt awkward and uneasy at the banquets of those high-ranking noble families. I didn't understand their tea competitions and accidentally knocked over a teacup, soaking my dress and drawing laughter from everyone. Now it's the same occasion once again, but I handled it with practiced ease, skillfully preparing the tea with froth swirling like misty mountains and clouds. earning the princess's continuous praise. Even my mother was surprised, asking how I knew these things. As she had never seen me do this in linen, everyone was taken aback, except for one person, whose gaze fixed intently on my teacup, amid the noisy crowd. Lu Jingyuan's gaze pierced through the people, instantly locking onto me, his eyes filled with shock. He was puzzled, wondering how I could know such a technique. Of course, he didn't know these were all things he later taught me. We were married for several years, but in the end, we went our separate ways. When the Su family was exterminated, he was in charge of the Ministry of Justice, impartial enforcement, without favoritism. This was his principle. At that time, he said. Only by showing no bias and no favoritism can one earn the trust of both the court and the public. When the Su family was in trouble, I once begged him desperately in the prison, pleading with him to save my parents, but he pried my hands away and said in a low voice, "There are no exceptions before the law, but I will do my utmost to find evidence and fight for a glimmer of hope for the Su family." Trust me, he had always kept his word, so I trusted him and waited for him. But until the imperial edict of execution came down, I never saw his figure again. He aspired to be a virtuous minister who would leave a legacy in history and bring honor to his family, with not a single stain on his reputation. Perhaps, when the entire Su family was executed, it was precisely the time when his reputation for integrity and impartiality was shaking the court. But this time, I no longer wished to be the disposable accessory by the side of the virtuous minister. I avoided his probing gaze. This time, even if we meet, we should pretend not to know each other, remaining as strangers. My sister was still surprised by my transformation at the banquet, but there was little time left for her. The envoy from the western regions would soon arrive in the capital. The western regions were remote, with a harsh climate and fierce customs, not a place ordinary people could endure. The Grand Princess naturally had no wish to let her beloved daughter suffer there. This piece, my sister, will soon be put to use by the princess. I had warned my sister before that she was merely a pawn found by the princess to replace Princess Mingen in marrying far off to the western regions, but my sister said she wasn't afraid. The letter of state from the western regions had arrived in Da Yarrow several months ago. They demanded that the person for the marriage alliance must be the princess's daughter. This matter has been kept secret all along, and no one knows about it now. The leader of the western regions has an old grudge against the Grand Princess, and there may be other entanglements as well. The Grand Princess has been searching for a suitable substitute to marry in her place. The noble and royal women in the court would certainly be unwilling to marry far away to the western regions. Their backgrounds are too high, and with the support of their families behind them, they are difficult to control. Finding someone of lower status, tempted by wealth and luxury, and offering substantial benefits might just work. By acknowledging a daughter at this time, the Grand Princess's selfish motives are already quite evident, but the Grand Princess's plan was destined to fail. The calming incense my sister offered allowed the Empress Dowager to sleep peacefully at night, and she immediately rewarded her with the luminous pearl that had been presented as tribute from a foreign land. Princess Mingen had previously asked the Empress Dowager for this luminous pearl, but her request was denied. Princess Mingen considered this a great humiliation and was furious. As soon as she returned to her residence, she went to confront my sister and even pushed her into the lake. When my sister was rescued, she was still making excuses for the princess, saying she had accidentally fallen into the water and that it had nothing to do with Princess Mingen. The one who saved my sister was none other than the second prince, in front of everyone. After my sister fell into the water and her clothes were soaked, the second prince took off his own robe to cover her and even carried her away. Rumors quickly spread throughout the capital. Elder sister's reputation was tarnished, and the second prince knelt before the palace, saying he would take responsibility for her and begged the emperor for marriage. The Grand Princess flew into a rage and even slapped Mingen County Princess. Mingen County Princess had always been arrogant and domineering, and the Grand Princess had always indulged and favored her, never having been so angry with her before. Everyone thought the Grand Princess was considering the debt of saving her life, favoring her adopted daughter over her own. In truth, she was just filled with hatred. I hate that my own daughter is so foolish, wasting a well-planned move I had carefully arranged for nothing. After my sister fell into the water, she stayed at the Su residence all along, because Princess Mingen took the initiative to stir up trouble. Others thought it was the princess who couldn't tolerate her. When I went to see my sister, her face was pale, and she was still coughing slightly. I walked slowly to the bedside and said with a smile, "Congratulations, sister. You've killed 2 birds with 1 stone and achieved your wish." I stood by the bed, speaking in a light tone. A flicker of surprise passed through my sister's eyes, followed by a scrutinizing look. What's the reason for this, Joy? No need to play dumb in front of me. Do you think it was just a coincidence that the second prince showed up? It was you. Yes, it's me. But my sister was never a fool. She knew exactly where Princess Mingen's weakness lay and deliberately provoked her with words. So the princess couldn't resist pushing her. She simply took the opportunity to fall into the lake and escalate the situation. Now, with things having unfolded this way, she has not only thwarted the Grand Princess's plan to have her serve as a substitute bride but also secured the support of the second prince. This was the outcome she had always wanted. I merely gave her a nudge from behind the scenes. The second prince's willingness to secure you the title of a consort is no small feat, I said, my voice lowering as I reminded her to face reality. A trace of disappointment flickered across my sister's face as she murmured softly, "Just a consort. This outcome was expected." I interrupted her. "The Su family's current status is too low, and it will ultimately hinder your ambitions. However, now is not the time to rush. The path ahead of you is long, and I will help you." Upon hearing this, my sister stared at me in a daze, her eyes filled with disbelief. "How much do you actually know? I know you are not my biological sister, that you are the orphan of the Liang family, and that you have never forgotten the hatred from the massacre of your clan." I spoke slowly, each word striking her heart like a heavy hammer. "You need this opportunity to get close to the imperial power, so I will yield it to you." As soon as I finished speaking, my sister's expression changed completely. Her lips trembled slightly, and tears welled up in her eyes. You knew all along. Don't you think I am greedy for glory and deliberately claimed a false debt of gratitude? I know how difficult this journey has been for you." I reached out and gently touched her slightly cool hand, my tone softening. "Since I've been reborn, I won't let the tragedies of the past life repeat themselves. I will protect the Su family, and I will protect you even more. From the day the Liang family was exterminated and the Su family took her in, she and I have been bound by a shared fate. I came to the Su family when I was 6 years old. Father and mother treated me extremely well. They thought I was too young to remember the past, but I never forgot the blood-soaked hatred of my family for a single day." Elder sister's voice trembled with suppressed emotion, and as she spoke, she began to cough violently, her face growing increasingly pale. "In my past life, by the time I learned of her origins, it was already too late. The entire Su family had been wiped out, and I couldn't even protect my own life, let alone help her seek revenge. Now that I've been given a second chance, everything is still within reach." I sat by the bed, gently patting her back to soothe her. "This time, we're still in time." Elder sister wondered how I knew all this, and I simply said I had overheard our parents' private conversation. She didn't press further, perhaps too overwhelmed by her emotions to dwell on it. Princess Mingen had always been arrogant, and now she was seen as the villain in everyone's eyes. Even if some had doubts, they wouldn't suspect elder sister after all. Since elder sister entered the princess's residence, the princess had often troubled her, and this act of pushing someone into the water seemed like an outburst of long-held resentment. The envoys from the western regions soon arrived in the capital. The person they sought to marry was the daughter of the princess. Now that elder sister had been betrothed to the second prince by imperial decree, with no room for change, the only candidate left was Princess Mingen. The ministers quickly submitted memorials to advise, kneeling before the palace gates to plead. Princess Mingen has been supported by the royal family for many years. Now that the nation faces crisis, she should share the burden for the state. We beg the princess to consent to the marriage alliance. We implore the princess to prioritize the kingdom and make this painful sacrifice." Each plea was a form of coercion, leaving no room for retreat. The emperor wore a look of helplessness, but I knew all too well that what he valued most was imperial power. His so-called helplessness was merely a performance for outsiders. I was peeling a pomegranate for my elder sister when news from outside reached us. I remarked calmly, "These old ministers, they only know how to repeat the same few lines." My elder sister suddenly spoke up. "The general who guards the nation has returned from the border." My hand paused, and a faint sense of foreboding stirred in my heart. Sure enough, not long after the general's return, the princess consort's attitude changed completely. She personally submitted a memorial to the emperor, stating that Princess Mingen had voluntarily agreed to a political marriage. Even more surprisingly, the wedding dates for both princesses were set for the same day, the 16th of the 12th lunar month. Princess Mingen would marry far away to the western regions, while my elder sister would enter the eastern palace as a consort. Everyone praised the princess consort for her noble sacrifice and congratulated her on the double happiness, but I found the situation suspicious. The general's mere return to the capital had somehow made the princess consort change her mind and willingly send her own daughter into hardship. There had to be something fishy going on. The people from the princess's residence soon came to take my sister back to prepare for the wedding, claiming that the princess cherished their mother-daughter bond and wanted her to marry from the princess's residence. This reason seemed reasonable on the surface. But it was impossible to refuse. If my sister declined, it would only make her appear estranged from the princess due to past events, giving others grounds for criticism. As my sister followed the escorts away, her eyes were filled with unease, watching her retreating figure. My heart felt heavy. The Guardian General was certainly not an easy opponent to deal with, and this trip to the princess's residence was likely far from simple. After my sister left, our mother often had nightmares at night, waking up in tears and saying, "I keep dreaming of Qingwan pleading for help, saying she doesn't want to go to the western regions, she doesn't want to leave home." My heart sank sharply. This scene was exactly the same as in my past life. When Princess Ming'an appeared before me again, she showed no trace of the fear that should accompany an impending political marriage. Instead, she wore a confident, almost provocative smile. There has always been a hierarchy of nobility and baseness in this world. Su Qingwan, born lowly, is only fit to be my substitute, married off to the barbaric wilderness. That is her fate. She remained as arrogant as ever, always believing that everyone should bow to her, but she forgot that even the humblest of people have a bottom line they refuse to have trampled upon, and even the noblest can stumble because of their own pride. On the day of the grand wedding, the Grand Princess put on a show of reluctance to part with her daughter in front of the Guardian General, yet there was not a shred of sincerity in her eyes. Once Princess Ming'an stepped beyond the Zhengyang Gate, there would be no turning back. But just then, an unexpected event occurred. The envoy from the western regions stated that according to their customs, the princess must personally drink 3 farewell cups of wine and bid farewell to her homeland. However, there was no movement from inside the sedan chair, prompting the envoy to immediately challenge, "Why is the princess unwilling to come out? Could it be that the one sitting in the sedan chair is an imposter?" As soon as the words were spoken, a female official from the envoy's entourage suddenly stepped forward and flung open the sedan curtain. The unconscious person inside turned out to be my elder sister. The Grand Princess and the general who guards the nation instantly turned pale, and chaos erupted on the scene. Standing among the crowd, I watched it all coldly. I had long anticipated their scheme to send my elder sister to the western regions in place of Princess Ming'an, allowing Princess Minghui to stay and marry into the Eastern Palace. Once the deed was done, even if the court officials had objections, they would have no choice but to accept it. But they forgot. I won't let them succeed. I had already sent someone to deliver a letter to the Western Region envoy, warning them to be wary of the Grand Princess's schemes. Today's chaos is nothing but a grand gift I prepared for them. Soon, the second prince arrived with his men and carried my sister out of the sedan chair. The 2 princesses were finally returning to their rightful places. In my past life, to avoid the marriage alliance, my sister deliberately jumped into the cold pond, which left her with chronic health issues. Though she survived, she could never bear children. This time, I won't let her suffer like that again. I stood on the second floor of the tea house, watching Princess Ming'an being forcibly pushed into the ornate sedan chair, her face full of fear. With none of her usual arrogance left, she was just a spoiled child, and once stripped of her protection, she was utterly defenseless. Upon learning of this, the emperor immediately dispatched the imperial guard to maintain order, ostensibly to keep the peace, but in reality, it was a warning to the princess and the general. Their schemes had long been seen through by the emperor. Princess Ming'an still wanted to resist, but she found that no one was there to protect her anymore. From then on, she would be exiled to the western regions, with no one to shield her from the storms or indulge her whims. Her future would depend entirely on her own fate. In the end, my elder sister married into the Eastern Palace, becoming the second prince's consort. I saw with my own eyes the second prince say to her, "Seeing you, my dear, is like the return of an old friend." I worry that my sister might become so immersed in this gentleness that she forgets the lessons from her past life and the hardships ahead, but she remains clear-headed. Every time I wake from a midnight dream, I can still recall the night the Liang family was massacred, the glint of blades, the cries and screams, those days when I lived under an assumed name, drifting from place to place. How could I ever forget? She paused, then added, "That day, when I looked into the second prince's eyes, I always felt as if he was seeing someone else through me. My heart stirred. And suddenly I understood the second prince's special regard for my sister might be because she reminds him of someone from his past. My sister enjoys playing pitchpot and chess, excels at composing incense recipes and melodies, all habits she developed during her time with the Liang family, and when the second prince was young, he was tutored by Minister Liang, so the two of them shared a kind of childhood sweetheart bond. After the fall of the Liang family, that connection was severed, but now, because of my sister, it has been rekindled. The eldest princess clearly realized she had become her sister's stepping stone, and whenever she saw her sister afterward, her expression was always icy, devoid of the former affection. But that didn't matter, her sister had never relied on her in the first place. They were bound to become adversaries sooner or later, a fact her sister understood better than anyone. Her sister also hadn't forgotten that it was the Guardian General who masterminded the extermination of the Liang family. Disagreeing with Chancellor Liang's political views, he colluded with others to fabricate evidence, falsely accusing the Chancellor of corruption and bending the law. He even bribed Liang's trusted disciple, Zhao Heng, to publicly testify against him. With the betrayal of a close confidant, the Chancellor's guilt was sealed, and the entire Liang family was executed, with no one spared. Life in the Eastern Palace was far from peaceful. The emperor soon selected a crown princess for the second prince, the young lady of the Shen family from the Dingyuan Marquis estate. On the day the crown princess entered the Eastern Palace, her bridal procession stretched for miles, extravagantly lavish, a world apart from her sister's low-key wedding. The crown princess was carried through the main gate of the Eastern Palace, while her sister had entered through a side gate back then. If Chancellor Liang were still alive, her sister should have had such grandeur. My sister asked me to enter the palace to keep her company, amid the flickering red candles. She leaned against the window frame, her expression detached. The second prince said it's easy to be with me, and that he would always cherish me. But what he didn't say is that this favor can be taken back at any moment. She saw it clearly, knowing that favor does not mean exclusivity, much less irreplaceability. You should start taking care of your health. I reminded her calmly. I knew what she intended to do. She wanted a child, one that would help her secure her footing in the Eastern Palace. I am well versed in medicine and could certainly help her. Yet I still said, wait a little longer, the timing isn't right. After the crown princess married into the Eastern Palace, the second prince spent noticeably less time with my sister. Although Miss Shen was not as domineering as Princess Ming'an, she had held a grudge against my sister for years due to her long-standing affection for the second prince. After all, my sister was the one he had personally sought to marry, while her own marriage was merely arranged by the emperor. In response to the crown princess's admonishments, my sister always smiled and complied, appearing gentle and obedient, never saying more than necessary. Besides the crown princess and my sister, there were 4 other beauties in the Eastern Palace, among whom Lady Liu was the second prince's favorite. It wasn't long before Lady Liu became pregnant, and the empress and emperor bestowed many treasures upon her, making her increasingly arrogant. She even provoked the crown princess on several occasions. On the crown princess's birthday, Lady Liu suddenly suffered a miscarriage and insisted that the crown princess had poisoned the tonic given to her. Since consort Liu became pregnant, I have been urging my sister to keep her distance. In our previous life, my sister was the one who took the blame for consort Liu. In the previous life, my sister lacked the family background of the crown princess. After being falsely accused, she was not only subjected to harsh interrogation but also nearly lost her life. The second prince claimed to believe her, yet he never stepped in to protect her. In this life, my sister avoided the turmoil in advance. Using the excuse of reciting sutras and praying for the Empress Dowager, she hid in the palace, completely staying out of the matter. In the end, the palace court ladies uncovered the truth. The real culprit was another consort, Lady Ju. The crown princess was placed under house arrest for a period of time and became much colder in temperament after her release. Consort Liu, grieving the loss of her child, shut herself away and grew increasingly despondent. After this incident, the second prince instead began visiting my sister more frequently, confiding his troubles to her. The crown princess doesn't understand me, and consort Liu is too delicate. My sister listened quietly like a flower that understands speech, occasionally offering a few words of comfort. But I knew there wasn't the slightest ripple in her heart. The betrayal from her past life had long since extinguished any expectation of the second prince's affection. I began helping my sister recuperate and improve her health. By mid-autumn, news of my sister's pregnancy had spread throughout the Eastern Palace. Having learned from the lessons of the past life, The empress was especially cautious this time. She specifically sent palace maids to care for my sister and conducted a thorough search of the Eastern Palace, removing all suspicious people and objects. The empress, having heard that I was knowledgeable in medicine, had me move into the Eastern Palace to take care of my sister up close, saying, with her sister by her side, Qinghuan can feel more at ease. The second prince, having lost a child before, was especially looking forward to this one and became more attentive to my sister than ever. The crown princess and the other beauties, having witnessed the fate of consort Ju, were all afraid of bringing trouble upon themselves and kept their distance from my sister. So the Eastern Palace finally became a bit quieter. Watching me arrange everything in an orderly manner in her courtyard, my sister smiled and said, Qinghuan, you truly are my savior. My hand holding the medicine dregs paused, and I said softly, we are sisters, we rise and fall together. She once carried me back from the mountains in a heavy snow and told me childhood stories in the dim light of night. This kindness, I have kept in my heart. Now, it is my turn to protect her. The empress's health had always been poor. The imperial physicians prescribed conservative treatments with little effect. My sister seized the opportunity to recommend me to the empress, saying that while in Linen, I had studied under a master physician and was skilled in treating women's internal ailments. I entered the palace to treat the empress, and within just a month, her complexion improved significantly. When the emperor learned of this, he made an exception and allowed me to join the Imperial Medical Bureau, appointing me as a fourth-rank female medical officer. Not long after, my sister gave birth to a son, the eldest son of the second prince, and the imperial grandson, both inside and outside the palace. My sister was held in even higher regard, and the empress took the imperial grandson under her care to raise him. On the day of the imperial grandson's full moon celebration, the Eastern Palace was especially lively. As the birth mother of the imperial grandson, my sister became the center of attention. She walked slowly beside the second prince, facing the envious gazes filling the hall with a calm expression. Her gaze passed through the crowd and landed on me. I gave a slight nod. This was only the first step. The road ahead still had to be walked slowly. The empress bestowed upon me many gold, silver, and jade treasures, but looking at these things, I felt little interest. My sister felt the same. Such wealth and honor had never been what she truly wanted. I handed her a letter. Former students and officials of Chancellor Liang are now scattered across the land, some still searching for evidence to clear the Liang family's name. These are their names, perhaps they can help you. Elder sister's eyes widened in astonishment. How did you know I was looking for them? I guessed, I replied softly. In my past life, she had been doing this all along. Though she never succeeded, the Guardian General has never given up searching for the surviving members of the Liang family all these years. He fears our revenge. Elder sister's fingers tapped lightly on the table, a cold glint flashing in her eyes. Back when the Chancellor's residence went up in flames, it was the secret guards who risked their lives to get me out. I hid among the refugees, begging my way to survival. But the Guardian General is deeply suspicious. He never believed I died and is still searching everywhere. Now the most dangerous place is the safest place. I lowered my gaze. He would never expect you to be right under his nose, out in the open. In my past life, my sister failed, and the Su family was destroyed along with her. In this life, I will help her seek revenge, clear the Liang family's name, and ensure the Su family remains safe. The imperial grandson grew day by day. Reaching the age to begin his studies, the emperor's health worsened, and he often summoned the imperial grandson to the palace. Everyone could see how much the emperor valued his great-grandson, and the second prince's position grew increasingly secure. Not long after, the emperor passed away, the second prince ascended the throne, the crown princess became the empress, and my sister was granted the title of imperial consort. I watched the new empress wearing the phoenix crown and robe, carrying herself with grace and dignity, while everyone in the hall praised her as a motherly figure to the realm. My sister knelt below, kowtowing alongside the other consorts, and I too bowed my head. This scene felt both familiar and strange. My sister didn't understand why I looked so solemnly at the empress, but later, she came to realize my intention. After the new emperor ascended the throne, a grand selection was held, and many beauties entered the palace. The former attendants from the Eastern Palace gradually fell out of favor, but my sister paid it no mind. Her gaze had long turned toward the court. I found Zhao Heng. He's herding horses in the borderlands now, my sister told me calmly. Zhao Heng was the son of Zhao Heng, who had once framed Chancellor Liang. I know the time for revenge is almost at hand. In the 4th year of the new emperor's reign, the southwestern barbarians rebelled. The general of the nation, Citing failure to defend the territory, impeached the crown princess's father, the Shun family was stripped of their noble title. And the crown princess's brothers were all exiled to the northern deserts. Within 3 days, the crown princess voluntarily requested to be deposed and moved to a side palace. The new emperor gladly agreed. It was merely a transaction. She gave up her position as empress in exchange for her family's lives. The Shun family's great achievements have overshadowed the emperor, making them a thorn in the new ruler's side. This time, he merely used the hand of the general who guards the realm to eliminate this threat. On the day the deposed empress moved out of the Phoenix Palace, she appeared as if mad, laughing uncontrollably. She looked at my elder sister with a desolate gaze and said, "The imperial family has never known true affection, and you will be no exception." These words sounded like both a curse and a warning. My elder sister held my hand, her fingertips icy cold. She was afraid too. Afraid that one day she might meet the same fate as the deposed empress. In her previous life, my sister never became the mother of the crown prince, nor did she attain the rank of imperial consort. She was only granted the title of Gu, and in that very year, her life came to a tragic end. Her true identity was exposed, and she was labeled as a remnant of a disgraced official. The Guardian General was even more determined to see her dead. In the end, a cup of poisoned wine ended her life. And the Su family was executed to the last person for harboring a fugitive. I looked at the majestic Fengyi Palace before me and said to my sister, "Do not covet the position of empress." Though she did not fully understand, she still heeded my words. Later, when the new emperor proposed making her empress, she firmly refused, citing her humble origins and lack of virtue and talent. She did not bear the infamy of a femme fatale who brought ruin to the state. Instead, she earned a reputation for virtue and goodness. From then on, the position of empress remained vacant, and she, as an imperial consort, exercised the authority of the empress. The trajectory of our previous fate has finally been completely rewritten by us. Although my sister did not become the empress, she became the most powerful person in the imperial harem. The emperor's eldest grandson was established as the crown prince, and as the birth mother of the crown prince. Her position was as solid as a mountain. The Guardian General, seeing my sister's growing influence, attempted to cause trouble in the court several times, but each time the new emperor subtly suppressed it. The new emperor needed my sister to stabilize the harem and, more importantly, to use her status to restrain the Guardian General's power. I established a firm foothold in the Imperial Medical Bureau, not only tending to the health of the imperial concubines but also frequently diagnosing the ailments of court officials. Over time, many owed me favors, and I took this opportunity to quietly gather evidence of the Guardian General's past framing of Chancellor Liang. Zhao Heng, who had been in the border city for 5 years, was finally found by me. He had suffered greatly over the years. After his father Zhao Heng died, he was exiled and became the lowest of the low, a horse slave. I sent someone to bring him to the capital and settled him down under an assumed name. My father was coerced by the general of the nation back then. If he hadn't testified against Chancellor Liang, our entire family would have been executed. Zhao Heng knelt before me, weeping uncontrollably. "I have a secret letter left by my father, detailing the general's conspiracy. I beg you to clear the Liang family's name." I took the letter, my fingertips trembling slightly. This was the most crucial piece of evidence. Upon learning of it, my sister entered the palace overnight to see the new emperor and presented the letter to him. The emperor looked at the letter, remained silent for a long time, and finally said, "Let's wait a little longer." I knew what he was waiting for. He was waiting for the right moment to completely overthrow the general of the nation. The general held military power and enjoyed immense prestige in the army. Without solid evidence and a proper reason, acting rashly would only cause turmoil in the court and the country. This wait lasted 3 years. 3 years later, the son of the Guardian General was exposed for colluding with an enemy nation at the border and embezzling military provisions. The new emperor seized this opportunity, ordering a thorough investigation, and took the chance to reopen the case of Chancellor Liang from years past. Zhao Heng, serving as a witness, publicly accused the Guardian General, and the secret letters were also revealed to the public. With irrefutable evidence, the court and the public were in an uproar. The Guardian General was imprisoned in the imperial dungeon, and his followers were systematically purged. The Liang family's grievances were finally redressed, as the new emperor issued an edict to restore Prime Minister Liang's reputation, posthumously honored him as Grand Tutor, and even rebuilt the Liang family's mansion. Elder sister stood before the site of the old Liang residence, gazing at the familiar Vermilion Gate. tears silently streaming down her face. After more than 20 years, she had finally avenged her family and cleared their name. "It's all over," I said softly, patting her shoulder. She turned around and looked at me. Her eyes filled with gratitude. "Qinghuan, without you, I wouldn't have made it this far. We are sisters. It's only natural that we support each other," I replied with a smile. After the general of the nation was executed, the new emperor's authority was completely solidified. He wanted to appoint me as the head of the female officials, in charge of the entire Imperial Medical Bureau, but I declined. "Your Majesty, I only wish to stay by my sister and the Crown Prince, living a peaceful life." The emperor did not insist, only sighing. "You, always so clear-sighted, I know that in the court. The greater the power, the higher the risk. Now that my great vengeance has been avenged, and my sister and the Crown Prince are safe, I have no other desires." Day by day, the Crown Prince grew up, intelligent and sensible, much loved by the new emperor. My sister no longer involved herself in court affairs, spending her days accompanying the prince in his studies, and occasionally enjoying flowers and tea with me. Life was peaceful and stable. Occasionally, I would think of Lu Jingyuan. He is now the Minister of Justice, still strict in enforcing the law, but with a few more traces of weariness between his brows. We occasionally meet in the palace, and he would stop to politely ask, "Is Medical Officer Su well?" I would also respond courteously, with no further words exchanged. The entanglements of past lives have long since vanished with the wind. We are all people living in the present. There's no need to cling to the past anymore. That winter, the capital was blanketed by a heavy snowfall, as heavy as the one that trapped me in the mountains when I was 9. My elder sister held my hand, standing under the eaves to watch the snow, and said with a smile, "Do you remember that year's heavy snow, when I carried you home on my back?" Back then, I thought to myself, "I must always protect you well in the future. Now it's my turn to protect you." I gripped her hand tightly, my palm warm. The snow outside the window continues to fall, blanketing the entire imperial city in a pure and tranquil white. I know that there may still be storms in the days to come, but as long as we sisters stand united, we will surely weather them safely. In this lifetime, none of us repeated the mistakes of the past. We all lived as the people we wanted to be. 10 years into the new emperor's reign, his health gradually declined, and discussions about the Crown Prince grew more frequent in the court. Although the Crown Prince had come of age and was steady and measured, some of the old ministers still considered him too young and secretly supported other princes. Though my elder sister did not involve herself in the affairs of the court, she was well aware of the undercurrents at play. She privately advised the Crown Prince, "In all matters, listen more to Minister Lu's advice. Though he enforces the law strictly, he is selfless and a rare loyal minister." Hearing these words, my heart stirred slightly. Lu Jingyuan's integrity had never changed, neither in this life nor the last, but we were no longer on the same path. One day, after checking the Empress Dowager's pulse, I unexpectedly encountered Lu Jingyuan in the imperial garden. He stood beneath the plum tree, snowflakes dusting his shoulders, his expression somber. Seeing me approach, he gave a slight nod and said in a low voice, "Physician Su, Lord Lu." I responded politely, about to leave. But he called me back. "Back then, thank you," he said, looking at me with a complex emotion in his eyes. "If you hadn't warned the Western region envoy, Princess Qinghuan would have long been married off to a distant land." I paused in my steps, surprised that he knew about this. "It was a small effort, Lord Lu. There's no need to dwell on it." After a moment of silence, he added, "I know you understand medicine, and I know you've been tending to the Empress's health. You've always been protecting the Su family, protecting Princess Qinghuan. They are my family," I replied calmly, unwilling to elaborate further. I did not linger any longer and turned to leave. Some pasts are better left unexamined, some people are better left unremembered. After the new emperor passed away, the Crown Prince ascended the throne smoothly, and my elder sister became the Empress Dowager, ruling from behind the curtain, as a female official in the imperial court. I remained by her side, assisting her in handling palace affairs. On the day of the coronation ceremony, my elder sister, dressed in the intricate robes of the Empress Dowager, stood beside the new emperor, her gaze resolute. After the rites concluded, she took my hand and whispered softly, "Qinghuan, we did it." I nodded, a faint glimmer in my eyes. Yes, we did it. The Liang family's grievances were redressed, the Su family remained safe and prosperous, and my sister, once an orphaned girl, had now become the Empress Dowager who held sway over the imperial harem. Days gradually settled into a routine, as my elder sister began to train the new emperor in handling court affairs. slowly delegating power. In our leisure time, we would return to the old Sioux family residence together or brew tea and chat in the palace, just like ordinary sisters. That year during the Mid-Autumn Festival, a banquet was held in the palace. Watching the joyful scene in the hall, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of peace. My sister walked over to me and handed me a mooncake. Try it, it still tastes just like the ones from Linen Prefecture back in the day. I took the mooncake and took a bite, the sweetness spreading through my mouth. It turns out that the most precious thing isn't wealth or glory, but being able to spend each ordinary day peacefully with the people who matter. After weathering life's storms, late at night, I stood before the palace gates. Gazing at the star-filled sky, the hardships of my past life have long faded, and the peace of this life did not come easily. I know that as long as we sisters stand together, the days ahead will surely get better and better.